Welcome to the Airflow Podcast. I'm your host, Rickey Thomas, and this is the place where Kingdom heirs go to be informed and inspired. So sit back, relax, and flow with me. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Airflow Podcast. I am your host, Rickey Thomas, and I am so thankful to be back this week. I missed last week, feeling down and had a cold, so, just coughing and everything, and I didn't want to get on here sounding all nasally and congested and everything, and so my wife told me to stand down, and I listened. Because I was going to still try to get this thing out here because I wanted to keep everything going. I didn't want to take a week off, but I'm glad I did. I am healed. I thank God for healing me. I thank God for my wife and family looking out for me, and I'm back. So definitely appreciative to my wife. So KK, if you're listening, thank you. I appreciate you. And today I really wanted to, it's been in my heart to talk about this, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart, but fatherhood. One of the things that I've always, and I know I've said this on different episodes of the Airflow Podcast, but there's been so many times that I've mentioned one of the things that I was so wanting to do with my life is to be a father, outside of being a husband and, other aspirations, obviously, being a father to me was one of the things that I really wanted to do. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have kids, and not just have them because it's cool to have kids or people think it's cool just to have kids, like they're, little Cabbage Patch Kids and baby dolls, and you can dress them up and they're so cute. And, I wanted to be a father. I signed up for everything, I should say, for the cuteness, for the ugliness, for the tantrums, for the tough conversations. I signed up for all of that, and I accept that role. And so I've been fortunate to grow up around and I choose to associate with people, men who are taking that role seriously. And I've said it again, I've said it before, I had a great opportunity to see what good fathers are like. My dad, my uncles, older cousins, and this is on both sides of my family, on my mom and my dad's side. I was able to grow up around that. And so that just instilled that want and desire to be a father. And I know sometimes, people hear stuff like that and they think that because I say you're a good father, that means that you're perfect, and that's not what that means. And at the same token, being a good father, just understanding what being a good father means for kids, it's a big portion. It's a big vital part of raising a child. And moms, I want to make sure you understand this. A good mother is essential, very essential, and a big part of the equation as well. And trust me, I will be speaking on that a little bit more with mothers, and I want to have my wife and other mothers on the podcast to discuss just motherhood and what it means like to be a mother, especially nowadays. But like Tupac said in Dear Mama, you are appreciated. Mothers are appreciated, but I just want to show some love to the dads, especially since I'm one. And I think it's good to do that because I see a lot of times where fathers don't get their just due, and it may not be from the people that are close to them. A lot of times it is kind of a perpetuation from, as people say, the media or just different things. You see a father is usually, struggling with the relationship with the family a lot of times. And there's a lot to be said for that and why that is. And there is some truth to everything, and there's obviously some truth that there are there are fathers out there who are not stepping up and taking care of business the way that they should and what their kids need. And I'll dig into that a little bit more. But, I just want to talk through some things about, fatherhood and being a father and really what that means. Because again, fathers are a major part of the success of a family. And, like I said, just the devaluation that happened, the devaluation that happens when you talk about the importance of fatherhood and how critical a father is in the home. And I said in the home, and the key part is that in being in the home, I wanted to be a father and raise my kids in a loving home with my wife, their mother. Now, I know that doesn't always happen that way. So before people start freaking out and saying, well, sometimes situations change, and that is true. But I wanted to make sure that for me, and again, this is for me, I wanted to raise my kids inside of a home with their mom, and I want them to have both their parents because I had that experience. Now, I'm not saying that everything was perfect and we were just, everything was just lovey-dovey. There were challenges, but there was so much love there that it overcame the challenges. And I got a chance to be around my dad and have him in my life and be an active and participatory father. He wasn't just there. He didn't just go to work and give us money and then just go do his thing. Like, he was there. He is there even now, even today. My father at 68 years old, he has been just, continuing to pour into me, into my kids, and so, my brother and my sisters and their families. He's there. And he helps out, he gives wisdom, and he continues to do that. And that is, for me, the examples that I had, some of the examples and the main example I had of a good father. And just understanding that, even as becoming a father can be overwhelming. And, new fathers are just, if you've been a dad and just having kids and there's a lot of pressure to take on a lot as a father. And that is one of the things that, also I want to discuss in this is because, there's support out there. There's, and I'll mention a few groups in Facebook and just other places within, but, we've got to be able to support each other, because there are a lot of fathers who want to do good, who care about doing good and do right by their families, by their whether they're married to their children's mother, or they're just trying to make sure that everything is working out for the betterment of that child, and that is very important through the situation. So I want to first talk about some of the qualities of that I look at when I think about what a good father is. And again, some people may have some. They may have, may not have some of those qualities, or they may not have experienced them yet. And that's fine. That's okay, because it's a growth process. You don't start off as a father and then everything just, you have everything laid out from day one. I remember bringing home my daughter when she was first born, and I remember looking at her and, I was scared out of my mind because, I was responsible for this life. And there was there was kind of an instinct, a paternal instinct that kicked in it. I just want to make sure that she is safe. She has everything in the world possible. And, you start really thinking about, what you wouldn't do for that child, but I was so scared. I had so much anxiety, about that, about being a dad. And, it was almost to the place where it's like, before I even got married, like, wow, am I really ready to get married and take on the responsibilities as a husband and then bring a child into this world, as crazy as things are? And this is, back in, 2000, early 2000s, so, and you think about where things are in the world, but I knew that was one of the things that I was purposed to do, is to be a husband and to be a father. And so that's really why I wanted to make sure that, I speak on this because, you know, contrary to some belief, and I'm not saying everywhere, but contrary to that belief, we are important to the family structure. We are smart. We are not weak. We are emotionally stable. We are aggressive in areas where we need to be, and we are involved. And that was one stereotype. I wanted to make sure those are some of the stereotypes I wanted to make sure that's not there, because again, you get this portrayal of men, fathers, that they aren't there, they aren't compassionate, they don't care about their kids, they're just there to do, they had them, they enjoyed the process of making them, but they didn't enjoy the process of raising them. And again, there are always exceptions to the rule. There are some that, unfortunately, they, for whatever the situation was, whatever environment they grew up in, they don't think like that. So as a father, I just want to make sure you guys understand, and I'm speaking to the dads out there, you are important to the family. You are a role model. You're unconditional in your love. You can be a disciplinarian. You can be a provider. And, you can definitely love the mother of your children, or the mothers of the children. And I say love, and, it doesn't mean relationship, but, respect them as best as you can, and sometimes that is the true test, and I've heard the stories, and I know I've heard, thank God I don't have to deal with that on a personal level, but I've heard about the horror stories on both sides. And so I know there can always be a debate. Well, there's the dad is this and the mom is that, and you start hearing baby daddy and baby mama, which I don't even like using that term, truthfully. I think it is definitely, it's not a term of endearment. It is definitely something a title that you give to somebody who isn't really good at being a father or mother. You have no emotional care for that person. And it just creates a toxic environment around that child when you're referring to each other as the baby mama or the baby daddy. If you're doing it, I know I've heard people play around like that, but when you're serious about it, and there's just so much disdain for that other person, it does create a bad environment. So, we don't have to do that. As fathers, we don't have to do that, and somebody in a relationship has to take on the bigger role. So I'm speaking to the dads right now. Why not let it be you if you're in that kind of situation? So, obviously, when people say, well, what does it take to be a good father? Well, you're going to love and protect your kid's mom. And, I'm going to harp on that because it's important to understand that whether you're divorced or single, from a father's standpoint, and I know it's going to look a little different because it may not be your responsibility, because you could be divorced and, your children's mother could have, been remarried in a relationship or whatever, but you still have a certain aspect of protection to their mother. And that is not to talk down upon them, not to degrade them in front of your kids. And again, I know it's difficult, but you have to put some focus into making that relationship right. If you're in a marriage, you definitely have to put your kids first. And that is just when you talk about godly order, it's God, your spouse, and then your kids. And your focus should be on the wife and making sure that relationship is right. And again, it's not saying that you're not taking care of your kids, you're not loving your kids. That's not the case. But it's saying that when the best way that you can really take care of your kids and really truly loving your kids is giving them a nurturing environment that they're being taken care in. When you're with raising kids in turmoil and strife and everything else, and then you want to send them on their way and expect them to develop, a loving relationships, or develop loving relationships in their life and other things they do, it's kind of crazy. You create all kind of hell in the household, and then you expect the kids to go out into the world with this kind of loving, nurturing feeling that's going to support them and help and guide them through some of the toughest times that they may face, in transitions. And that's tough. But when, your marriage is good and nurtured, and your kids are going to be nurtured through that, and your family is going to, be taken care of all around. So it doesn't matter how well you love the kids, it really matters if you're taking care of the marriage. So that's important when you start talking about, married couples. And then if you're divorced and everything, again, I know sometimes there's restraining orders, there's other things that stop you, but you can still take the role of saying, I'm going to at least do my part in making sure that I'm trying to be cordial in the relationship. Because again, there's nothing more that a child will want to see, especially if his parents have been divorced or separated and they're going through turmoil and they've just been around that, because the kids pay attention and they know that kind of stuff. But it's important for them to be able to see, co-parenting, to see conversations together, to see, if there's something going on that you guys are making decisions together. It's not you against them, and my wife and I spoke about that in the previous episode, where we talked about how the kids will try to play us against each other to get what they want, and our kids have learned over the years, like, no, you can't go to one of us. We're going to have conversations. We're going to communicate. And you can still do that, within a separated relationship. It doesn't mean that you can't, or at least you can try to. And I want to encourage you to continue to try. And again, I know every situation isn't the same. It's not always easy. And everybody can tell me that, yes, that is not always true. I get it. And I'm not oblivious to that. And I'm not naive to that. I'm just saying, it's better to raise them and have them in a situation where there's at least an understanding and agreement. And then from your perspective as a dad, like, I'm doing what I can to make sure that my kids don't feel the animosity from my perspective, and sometimes it takes you to be the leader and break the ice. And sometimes it's the mom. I mean, it just depends. But again, since the focus is on fathers, then I'm speaking to the dads. Take that opportunity to break that ice and just say, you know what, I would rather for us to be cool and cordial than to sit here and fight all the time and then have our kids, because it's toxic, and it spills down to the kids, and then it spills into their relationships, to either where they're so overly against not being married or not wanting to have relationships because they saw how your relationship with their mother fell apart, or they become so dependent on being in a relationship that they don't have time to develop themselves, because they just throw everything they can into that relationship, because they think it's something good, and they're very dependent on that. And that can be a problem as well. So, there's a whole slew of things that you can look at in that. But, again, that's what I want to make sure that we call out. Try everything you can, because your kids will love and respect you for that at the end of the day. Obviously there's always the thing that a good father provides for his family. And if you poll most people, they'll probably say that the primary role of a father is to provide. It can be stereotypical. And I think I want to say that being a provider is not the only role of a father. Being a provider is not the only role of a father. It's an important role. And I think it's part of what has been historically used to define a dad. Sometimes I think it's overly used, because it is always being a provider from a financial standpoint. Some people are like, hey, I get child support taken out, so I'm providing for my kids. I'm a good father because they get everything that they need from me, and in terms of from a financial standpoint. And I'm here to say that while that is cool that you are financially taking care of your children, but that's something you should do. But being there for them, in those tough situations, or being there for them to celebrate those birthdays, and not just birthdays, but those school plays, or the first basketball game, or the first band recital that they have, or whatever it is that they do, being a part of that. You're providing your attention to them. Being a provider, you're providing your emotion to them. You're giving them, your presence. That is so important. And again, it's more than just food, water, and shelter. And I joke with my kids sometimes. They're like, oh, what are we going to get the kids for Christmas? And we don't really do a lot of stuff like that for Christmas because we just celebrate each other. We would rather take a trip somewhere than to go buy a bunch of gifts, because the memories we create on that trip is more important than, buying a bunch of trinkets that they'll probably start playing with in, a few months after they have it. So we got to this place of making memories and just really understanding that for us, that is, one of the main reasons for the Christmas and holiday season. But again, that's another message down the line. But it's more than just showing up for birthdays and holidays and bringing gifts. That is not, providing. Providing, you can say providing is, being able to hold down the job. It doesn't mean that you have to be making, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but are you consistently, working and keeping money coming in so that you guys can do something, especially if you're in a marriage, are you holding down a job, or is it always I'm in between jobs? Sometimes it gets to the place where you're more in between jobs than you are holding down a job. And sometimes it's sacrificing. It's sacrificing, to be in a place of making sure that income is coming in until you get the next thing, Now, there's always situations, so I always have to put out the caveat that, if you've got some mental health issues and the job is causing you physical harm, and it's going to potentially take you away from your family because you're going to be hurt from doing it, then that's a different situation. But if you're just like, oh, I work here, I work there, I'm demonstrating poor work ethic. That's something that you're providing, you're not providing value to your kids because you're not showing them the value of hard work. And you can be remote worker, like now, a lot of people now are going to be remote workers. Doesn't mean that you still don't work hard. Or you could be somebody that's an entrepreneur. You can be somebody who's, making money off of the internet, or just different. There's so many different ways that you can make income, but showing your kids that there's stability from that standpoint is providing, and it's definitely showing that you care about the well-being of your child, from a financial and just the overall sense that you're willing to do whatever you can to provide for them, but also to be there, and I say that because some people will take it, well, I'm hustling to do everything I can for my family. I'm thinking about them, and you may be, but you're not fully thinking about them, because if you were, put yourself in a position where you're not going to potentially be taken away from the family, which of course puts you in a whole different situation and puts the family in a situation that you don't want to be in. When you think of a good father, a good dad, they're disciplinarians. And again, it doesn't mean that that's the only role and the only people that can discipline in the family is a father. But, again, traditionally that is how it's been, is that the father is a disciplinarian. But it's not just about whoopings and everything else. It's making sure that you're talking to the kids. You're giving them reasons behind things. I know people, old school, which, I grew up that way. It's like, I don't have to give you a reason. Just do what I say. And that is very true. But at the same time, it's getting them to understand what the situation is, because there's so much knowledge, there's so much information that's out there, and some of it is just wrong information that kids can get their hands on. Spending that time to talk to them, about why they're being disciplined and understanding what the consequences of the actions was, or were, I've had conversations, with people who have tempers. I think about my son, he's 15 and he's a great kid, but he has moments where he'll get these little tempers if he feels like he got embarrassed or something like that. And so I tell him about that. If he gets to a place where he might be, in a bad situation, just had a bad day or something, and he acts a certain way, and, you call him out on it and he doesn't like it, he tends to pull back some. And I tell him, you got to be careful about that, because there are people in public that will trigger them to think that, you become a threat at that point. You get embarrassed, and then you want to talk back a little bit, and you want to kind of get an attitude, and, instead of just using your words and just, talking about what it is that's bothering you or what the trouble is. So that way we can work through it, and giving him a place to vent. So in having these conversations, it's like, you got to be careful, because, and I hate that I have to have that kind of conversation with my child, but these days you got to do what you got to do as a father. But it's about being consistent in how you discipline, being firm, but then being loving in the actions. And sometimes it's about being firm, but there's no loving behind it. You'll hear like it's the father's job to beat the kids, and then it's the mother's job to patch them up and send them on, and love on them and send them on their way, and that's not true, because you don't want to have that, because then your kids will feel like they can't come to you, or they can't talk to you about problems, or, be open and honest with you about things, because they only see you in this one role, and as a disciplinarian, and that's it. So there's a balance in that. It's love that has to come with it. Sometimes it's a conversation, and it may not be during the point of discipline, but it should happen at some point. But that's what a good dad does. They take that time to at least have those conversations. A good dad is a good father is not just focused on raising good kids, but it's really about preparing the kids for the future. And sometimes that's hard to do when they're younger. And I see that even with my 3 kids, in different stages. Sometimes it can be somewhat of a challenge to have those kind of conversations with them, or to discipline them to be a certain way as a kid when they are just kids. When you really think about it in the grand scheme of things, our kids are going to spend more time as an adult than they are as a kid, God willing. You're only going to be a kid up to a certain point. If the average lifespan is 70 something years, you're going to be an adult more than you're going to be a kid. So, one of the things that you really got to think about is, as a father, you want to make sure that you are taking some time to raise, well-behaved kids. And that's something that you and your wife, or, the child's mother, should be focusing on. But the other part is, the main part should be giving them the tips, tools, and techniques that'll help them to be good adults who are productive, in society. And, it can be challenging at times, because you don't want to tell a 5-year-old that you're behaving like a 5-year-old and discipline them with the expectation that they should act like they're 15 or 18 years old. That's not realistic. And in some ways you have to have some leeway. There's some things that you can't tolerate and you shouldn't tolerate, like talking back, disrespect, certain things like that. But in other ways, sometimes you just gotta let kids be kids. Kids are gonna be goofy. Their brains are still forming. They're still developing. They are going to, do things that kids do. And we don't really talk about that enough, because everything is about showing your kids acting like a grown-up. We've taken away, from a societal standpoint, we've taken away the enjoyment of the innocence of kids' youth. and before we give them the weight of the world. Like, these kids are taking on the weight of the world before their brains are even developed at a place where they can even understand the magnitude of what's going on in their world, because they're so open to everything. I mean, and that is the beauty of technology, is you can learn things very quickly and you have access to, so much data instantly. But the drawback from that is you have access to data instantly. And if you don't have filters, whether it's cyber filters for your devices, or if it's you as a parent to be able to filter what your kids are doing and what you give them access to, either through those tools that are, digital tools, or, physical tools, or just, having conversations to make sure you understand, like, well, what are you watching and why are you watching this? And, just keeping up with that. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge with parenting. It's a challenge with raising kids. But the end goal of all of this is to make sure that you're creating a well-adjusted adult. And sometimes you have to do a little work to shelter your kids. You can't just give the kids an iPad or a tablet and give them access to the internet and without any level of filter and expect them not to stumble onto stuff. They could hear a word and type it in, and that word could be, synonymous with something that is of adult material. And now the kids are exposed to certain things that they don't need to. And because you don't have a filter, any kind of filter through your device, they're seeing whatever is out there, and their world is opened up. Letting kids, I remember there was a big craze of kids watching YouTube videos about fights, and they're just watching people fight and get beat up and all these other things. And it just, like, they become numb to violence. They become numb to people getting shot and killed. And it just, you think about that, it changes the way that they view the world, because that innocence is gone at that point. It's bad enough that some environments that kids are raised in, they see that on a daily basis. And again, it's unfortunate. But as a father, helping to make sure that they are being guided to be more so well-adjusted adults. They're allowed to be kids to a point, but they're also getting the discipline they need, and then they're able to grow into adulthood with some proper tools. And as a father, it is our role to really help to guide that. And that is something, again, working with the mother to make sure that, whether it's your wife or their mother, making sure that they understand too what the goal is and what you're trying to do. It's not that we want them to grow up fast, we just okay with everything they do because they're kids, but it's creating that boundary and that balance to make sure that, my end goal is to make sure that when I'm gone and I'm no longer here, that I know that I help to raise somebody who is taking care of business and is a responsible, respectful adult. Not thinking everything is cute because they dance and do stuff that adults do, and it's funny because they're so little and they do that stuff and you laugh at it, but then, other people are turning side eyes at it, like, why are you allowing your child to act like they act, or act like something that they're not, and that attitude and stuff grows with the child. And I've seen it so many times. So that's something that's important. Another thing you can think about when you talk about, a good father is a good father leads by example. You hear it in the Bible, the father is called to be the priest, prophet, and king of the house. You are the leader. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be you make the most money. It doesn't mean that your voice is the loudest, but when God calls upon, when you go back to Adam and Eve, when you start talking about that, he didn't call upon Eve and why she did what she did. It was Adam. It's your fault. You should have made sure that was taken care of. You should have put the boundaries out there and made sure that your mate understood the assignment. And so it started from that point, and it just kept moving on. So understanding that, your role as a leader and as a father will diminish if you're not leading by example. Your kids are watching. Our kids watch us. They watch, and again, I know they watch the moms too, but the focus on the father. And I'm going to keep saying that because I just want to make sure I'm not excluding you guys. The focus is on fathers. But our children watch us. They watch everything we do. And most of the time, they forget the stuff we say, but they remember what we do. And we think, oh, they're too young to pay attention. They don't know. I remember stuff about my father and my mom, and just, as a young child, I remember things that I saw so many times because it was something that I saw over and over again. And that's how I know that, kids listen. I mean, and they see, not listen, but they look and they see and they understand based off of what we do, our actions. We can tell our kids all day to be respectful to adults and be polite to people and treat people with respect. But then every turn we go, we talk crazy to a waiter because they messed up something and, they made a mistake. And now we want to call everything and raise all kind of hell because, something bad happened. But we're teaching we want to tell our kids, hey, be respectful. You get respect if you give respect. You want to tell them those things, or, people that are driving crazy, you're yelling and screaming at them, honking your horn. And then on the other end, you're going to say, you shouldn't do that because, people out there today, they're dangerous. They'll shoot you. There's road rage and all this other stuff, but you're out here doing it because you're grown. But you're telling your child or your teenager who's going to be driving soon, like, you shouldn't do that. They're seeing that kind of stuff. And that's just a basic example, but our kids are good at detecting, kind of that BS meter. They know. They can see inconsistencies that, of how many of us behave. So it's up to us to make sure that, we are leading by example. And I'm talking to the fathers. And you think because they don't physically see it, sometimes they got instincts that you just don't know. Kids have discernment just like we do as adults. And you go back and just think about some of the things you did as a kid. And you think of some of the things that you heard your parents do that you thought you was being slick about, but you knew your parents was doing it. Why don't you think that can't happen with you? So again, I'm not saying that you got to walk on eggshells and be perfect in everything you do. You want to strive to be the best. And sometimes you may fall short, but just make sure you understand that is a very important part of it, is leading by example. Next thing is, as a dad, you should be a servant leader. A good father should be a servant leader. And having the ability to serve is important. It is a very important part of what we do as a father. And it's not just about telling people that you're leading what to do. You get in there with them and you do it. I can't tell my son to take the trash out if he never sees me do it. I can't tell my son when he's with my daughter, his sister, or he's with his mother. I can't tell him, hey, you get out, you pump the gas for them if they stop at the gas station, if I don't do it. I can't expect either of my sons to open the door for their mom if they don't see me do it. See, there's things that they've seen me do over and over again that they just instinctively do because they think that is the right thing to do. Now, that's with something good. So imagine if I was doing something wrong. See, if you're being a servant leader is about serving them and doing things and understanding that it's not about you, but it's about helping them to learn how to do things for themselves or how to do things for other people, and then being able to take that into being, a better person. That is what the goal is with all of that. So being a servant leader, it applies to fatherhood. It's about serving your kids as well. And people say, well, what differentiates a servant leader from other leaders? Well, humility is one thing. Humility. Do you think you are too good to do certain things? Are you after any kind of attention? Because somebody who's at humility, they're not after any attention. They're okay with others getting praise. And that is for some people that might be difficult. They're not afraid of hard work. And then they're selfless. That is, when you think about your family, you can't focus on yourself. If you're, and I know everybody has those moments where they're just like, hey, I need to take a second out for me. And that's okay. I say that is okay because, again, it's kind of like being on an airplane. When they say if the aircraft should get in any kind of trouble, the oxygen levels drop, what happens? The mask comes down and they tell you, put the mask on yourself first and then help those around you that need the help. Whether it's somebody who's younger that may not be able to do it, or if it's somebody who's just physically incapable or, just struggling with the process. And that's because you can't help others if you can't help yourself. So, but that's not really, that's not what we're trying to focus on. We're just saying that the main thing that you do is you put yourself in position that you can always think about your family, think about your kids. No matter how tired you are, you always have the energy to try to play with them if they're young, or spend some time with them, play a sport with them if they play sports, or, if you've got kids who are, in ballet or, whatever the thing is, music or arts or whatever it is, you're taking time to participate with them, taking time. You may be tired, and there's so many times that you have been, but again, that's one of the characteristics, as a servant leader. You're taking that time to go into that. So just remember that, as a parent, as a father, it's not just about do as I say and not as I do. It's not just about, I'm telling you to do this. It's standing out there saying, hey, I'm willing to do all these things and I've done all these things. I'm telling you to do this because it's going to help make you a better person. And with that, kind of going to the next thing is a father, you should be supportive a good father, you should be supportive to your kids. You should strive to be that. Even when times are hard, you should want to do it because you understand that, when the kids are young and as they get older, it's going to be very important. I mentioned earlier with my dad, he was supportive of me when I was a kid. He's supportive, came to, drove me to practice, took me to do different things, took me to baseball games when I was playing baseball and learning how he would drive me, take me to Detroit Tigers games and do things with me and support me in different ways. And now as an adult, he's still finding ways to support me, helping me out with things around the house. We got a new house and he's like looking at stuff and saying, hey, I think this would be perfect for your house, or giving me some ideas just because of the knowledge that he's gained. So he's always striving to do that. His role as a father never changed because now I'm a father, I'm an adult. He's 69, he's about to be 69, I'm 43, but his role as a father has never changed. He's never wavered. It just shifts in certain ways, but he's always there to support me. And that's important. As a child, when I was young, he was building that foundation that I was going to need going down the road. And some of it wasn't verbal. As I mentioned, some of it was just by example, just by the actions he did. And that helped me. My uncles, my older cousins, it was just some of the actions that they did that it wasn't about the lip service. It was about putting in the work and doing it. And to me, that was so important. And that's why I was definitely, so excited about becoming a father. Fathers should be slow to anger. And then when I say slow to anger is, you have to be understanding with the kids that, if the first thing you do is pop off and become angry and you're ready to jump down their throat every time they do something wrong, especially as the male figure, they're going to cringe up and they're not going to want to come to you for anything. Having empathy for your children, telling a kid that it's soft to cry, that's not really the deal anymore. I was raised somewhat like that. It wasn't so much as beaten into me like, some people had, But I just grew up in around that era. So for me, it was just like, okay, if you cry, you being what people say, you being a punk. Quit crying. Boys don't cry. Suck it up. Quit acting like a girl, which is disrespectful to ladies, but that's what you're told. And we started to normalize some of these behaviors that we get angry when they do something wrong. We're getting mad and our emotions get crazy. And then it's always like fathers are portrayed as, or will be portrayed as, being the angry ones of the family. We get loud, and usually we're the loudest, or our voices are deeper in most times, and physically bigger, and different things like that. So you think about, you go back to some of the shows back in the day, like Good Times, James Evans. Everybody was scared of James Evans as a father. I mean, his nostrils would flare up and he would look at you and, like he would tear somebody up. And that was just kind of the mindset of, that tough father role. And it wasn't about the emotional love and, hugging and talking to the kids. But then they did put some of that in there. But what is the thing that you most remember for those that watch Good Times? It was that James was angry. He was angry. He didn't play. And that was daddy. You didn't want to tell daddy nothing wrong because daddy didn't want, you wouldn't get daddy mad. And it's not to say that you don't get angry. I'm not saying good fathers don't get angry. You're going to get angry, but it's how you handle the emotions, is how you act out, and that is a real test of fatherhood, is how you handle those emotions. And again, kids are watching that. Your sons are watching, your daughters are watching, and they want to see, like, okay, well, this is how dad handles situations. So when he got upset about something or I did something wrong, this is how he responded. So either your kids are going to follow that trailer and be like, I'm not going to respond. I'm going to learn and not do that because I didn't like when my dad did it. So, just be mindful of that. Learn how you handle situations when you get angry. If you're the type of person that have anger issues and you got to step away, and just say, okay, tell them whatever you got to tell them and say, we're going to come back and talk once we cool down. And that's hard to do. That is hard to do, especially for me, because I want to get it knocked out in that situation. I want to get it taken care of so I can move on. I don't want to let it linger. But again, it's tough. It's a challenge. The next thing is, a good father, loves his kids. And I think that goes without saying. You can discipline your kids, but when they say discipline without love breeds resentment. So understanding that a good father loves his kids doesn't mean that you don't discipline them, but you still love them. They should never wonder if you love them. If your children wonder that, and sometimes you may have to ask them that, but children should be able to find peace and comfort, and they should be able to find consistency in your love. It's not lip action, but they know you love them because of the actions, because you're talking to them, because you're playing with them, because you want to be around them. If you tell your kids you love them, but then you never want to be around them, or you never make it a habit to see them or be around them or spend time with them, even when they're in your same household, then that's a problem, because they look at it like, well, you're not showing me love, and again, that's understanding people's love language, which is a whole different thing. Fathers, again, a good father is patient, and, understanding that, that there's the old saying that patience is a virtue. But as a father, your family will test your patience a little bit, and that's going to happen on a regular basis. And it's not that they're purposely seeking to do it. It's just living out each day. But we are called to pass that test. How we react to certain circumstances, is really going to be how we are defined as fathers in our kids' eyes. If you think of, or, the thought of teaching, our children immediately, just how we teach them comes to mind. How you handle it when you're teaching your kids a skill. I can say that, there are times when, especially, and I'm trying to get better at that, but there are times when I go through and I tried to show the kids how to do something, whether it's basketball or whether it's their schoolwork. And, I was less patient than my wife. So they would go to her. Now, it wasn't because I taught it differently in terms of the information. It was the delivery of it. It was because I was getting frustrated that they didn't pick certain things up, or I felt that they were not really focused on doing it the right way. They were trying to get out of it, or, and my wife and I have had this conversation. I'm like, I feel like they're trying to bypass really learning this. They just want us to give them the answer. They just want us to show them how to do it the easy way so they can hurry up and get the assignment done. And so I would get frustrated. I would get angry, raise my voice at times. And that's something that's not right, because it makes them not want to come to me. So when they have work, they go to my wife, and it frustrates my wife, because it's like, hey, you need to watch that, because your kids don't want to come to you. And it's a lot of stuff that, it's not that I'm not capable of doing it. And like I said, I give them the right answers, and I mean, not to give them the answers, but I give them the right information and explain it to them the same way she does. It's just, I get impatient with things. So again, that is something that is very important as a good father. And that's something that I got to keep doing. Now, I'll be encouraging, but it's kind of like, you're giving them this conflicting report. It's like you're impatient, but you're encouraging them. So it's confusing. And even as I sit here right now, think about that is that's something that I've got to continue to work on. So again, I'm saying these traits and all these things that are representative of a good father, but those are things a lot of these things I'm still working through. But I want to work through them. So I'm holding myself accountable, and I'm thankful I have a wife and a partner who holds me accountable in this as well. One of the things that I think is very key to being a good father is being dependable. You should be a man of your word, and your family should be able to count on you. If you say if you're saying, you're going to do something, the kids, your family should know that it's going to happen. If dad says, I'm going to do this, they can go to sleep on it. If you say you're going to be there for something, an event or something they have going on, be there. Now, again, there's always extenuating circumstances to why you can't, something you may not have to miss, or you may have to break your word. But it's more so when it becomes a habit. If it's always like, yeah, I'm going to be there. I promise you I'm going to be there. But work came up, and work came up. I had to do this for work and do this for work. And for me, it was getting to be that point for a while. So I had to make a decision. It's like, I can't keep saying, well, y'all want me to make money so we can go do these nice things and this, that, and the other. That's not an excuse, because what happens is the money becomes, like, I don't care about the job. I don't care about the money. I want you. And that's a tough pill to swallow, because you're thinking I'm busting my butt to provide, but my kid just wanted to see my face out there supporting him at whatever event he had going on. If he had parent-teacher conference at a school, if whatever it was, that's all he wanted, or she wanted. So, knowing that they can depend on us, you never want to hear your kids say, I can't depend on dad being there. When that happens, that's hard to get back. That's a trust, and that's a dependability that is hard to get back on. Your kids need to know that you're compassionate. And again, it's more than just, saying things. It's a feeling. It's a sense that you truly have sympathy, not just for your kids, but for other people. If something happens to somebody, like the fact that you care. Because if you create an environment like, I don't care about, like, so-and-so at school, their parent, one of their parents died, and you just say, oh, that's too bad for them, and just keep moving on. Your kid's going to be like, man, that's kind of cold, or such and such got in an accident, and you just say, oh, they shouldn't have been doing this. You didn't even know, but they shouldn't have been doing this, and you just kind of blow it off, or, portray the situation as different. That's something that's going to stick with the kids. And again, your child is going to look at that and say, there's no compassion. And then, for the next 10 years, they're going to think the world is ending, every time something bad happens, because they don't have, or they don't have the compassion. They don't have, skills like that. They don't understand. So we don't have to like it, but we can coach them out of certain situations. We can teach them that, life is more than what you see. We can have compassion about their situation and help them understand, that it's okay to feel that way, but I'm here. One of the things that my kids used to, as they got older and they started to get exposed to other things in the world, they started realizing that people weren't as nice as what they thought they were. And this especially with my daughter. She was just, my wife mentioned this on a previous episode. She would be the type that she just loved everybody. She would run up to you and just give you a big hug. And, she didn't think anything of it because she thought everybody needed a hug and everybody loved her and everybody had great intentions for her. And, we had to have a conversation with her. Like, it's not good to go hug people. I know that you have a good heart and you have good intentions, but everybody isn't like that. And then over the years, she started seeing certain things. When you start seeing kids being kidnapped and the way things started happening, the human trafficking was really becoming a big thing. And I was explaining those things to her and getting her to understand them. And she was like, why would people do that? It hurt her. Now, I could have been the hard-nosed father, like, oh, suck it up. This is just the world we live in, and you just got to understand, just listen to us when we tell you. No, I had to sit her down and talk to her, my wife and I, and we had to show her love and just talk to her in a way that she understood that, there are still good people in the world, but you got to be careful now. You got to know that everybody isn't necessarily for you. And it is big because the world opens up to them, and as it starts to open up more and more, that is something that we really have to be aware of, and that they do need compassion. Rounding out to the last couple, a good father is playful. It's nothing like, for me, doing things and playing with my kids, being silly, even to the point where my wife is like, okay, y'all are being too much. I'm like, oh, we just having fun, and she plays with them too. Don't get me wrong. But, it's good that both of us can have those moments where we're jumping around and, yelling and acting goofy and silly and, but it means a lot. And we started at a young age. So as a father, it was important for me to do that because, again, I go back to my dad used to do that. My friends used to come over and my dad would be sitting there making crazy noises and, everybody just crack up. And people used to always say, man, your dad is so funny. He's so fun and this, that, and the other. And I'll be sitting up there sometimes like, yeah, he fun until he got to whoop your butt for something. And then it's like, he ain't fun. But, he did it. He did it whether it was anybody around. He would just act crazy sometimes. And even now, my grandkids think my dad is like the funniest person ever. And I sit there, when I was a kid, I used to get embarrassed. And now I'm just like, he just loves to have a good time with his family. And that's who he is. And I do that. So I see a lot of those traits in me. And, of course, kids learn a lot through having fun and playing. Everything can't be just about being serious. We were all kids at some point, and sometimes it's just about playing. It's not about just a lesson to be learned. Sometimes it's just enjoying a good time, and that's important. As I mentioned before, kind of in some of the other things is a good dad is present, but not just present, you're involved. We know kind of what happens with when a father is absent. Some of us have grown up without a father that's present. Some of you that are listening right now didn't have the best relationship with your dad for whatever the reason was, or the reasons are they just weren't present. And it's okay, if you came up in that, but now as a father, you got to make sure that you're there. It's important. It's just not about working and providing for the family, and again, it's a role, but it's not the only role, and it's, the interesting thing, the interesting thing to us or to our kids, being a provider would not be the most important role to them. And you'll see that, kids, everybody likes a likes you to buy stuff, but your kids would just love you to be sitting there and smiling and spending time with you, and you got to think, what is your ability to be present in your life? What does it mean? What does that mean? Is it, both physical and emotional? Yes. And mental? Yeah. You've got to be present all around. It's not just being there. I know plenty of people who have fathers who have lived with them but had no real relationship with them. They were just physically there. There was no emotional, mental, kind of presence or involvement in their kids' lives. So again, it's not just about being there. If your mind is somewhere else, your kids sense that. It's like, well, dad is here, but he's doing his thing. Where is he at? He's out doing whatever he enjoys. He's not really thinking about us. The family's sitting down talking. Dad is always gone somewhere else. He's always away. He doesn't like to spend time together. He doesn't want to go out to eat together. He doesn't want to do this. Dad is just, he goes to work, he comes home, he goes to wherever he goes, and he does his thing, and then the mom sits there with the kids. That's not a good father. It's not a good father at all. And the last thing I want to really touch upon is a good father is proactive and not reactive. I think most of us know the difference. Proactive means, if you see something that needs to be fixed or that should be fixed, or you see something going the wrong way and you need to change it, you make the change when you see it at that point. Reactive is something happens and you change it after the fact. So, if you see your kids doing something going down the wrong way, you've got to try to catch it early. When you see it, you speak on it, you act on it. And it doesn't have to be in an angry way, but it can just be, it can just depend. I mean, sometimes it's your parenting style with your kids, but how you resolve problems before they become problems. You don't wait and let them linger, and then you want to blow up at your children and your family, because then, it's a bad way. But you have to learn how to also adjust yourself and your mannerisms and your temper or whatever else it is to be able to call it out at that time. So that way it'll be received in the right way. But the biggest thing is you want to resolve problems before they become problems. If you see attitudes or if you see behaviors within your kids that don't seem to be right, talk to them right then and there. Get it squared away. Help them understand what you see and why you feel like it's going that way. Now, again, with most of these, people will say that this can be the same thing that a mother can do, and all these kind of characteristics or attributes, and it's true. A lot of them are, but I feel like it's good for us to talk about this from the father standpoint, because, like I said before, I am a father. And, the role of a family and part of, taking over the mountains of this world, family is one of those mountains, and a father has a very vital role in this process. I've said it before, I'll say it again, a mother does a great role, but she wasn't created to be a father or to teach her kids or to give her kids the kind of attention that a father can give, or the love that a father can give. That's not their role. And they try. And I've seen it so many times where single mothers, they try to do everything they can, but it's different when you have a love from a father, the same way that a father can't teach and give the love that a mother can give. It's just different. So just really thinking through that, I want you as fathers, everybody that's listening that's a father, I want you to just know that your role is very, very, very important to your kids' life, your family. If you look up the definition, of fatherhood or fatherhood as itself, it's the state of having one or more children. It's a very basic thing, from that definition. It's just having children. But it's so much more than that. It's so much more than that, and all those characteristics I talked about. A father is a mentor. somebody that you're going to look up to, you're going to love, rely on, and respect. And I talked about some of those characteristics. And a father, a parent at some stage, and I talked about this, can be a friend to a point. But he's somebody that whose love and provision and protection and presence, advice, discipline, and encouragement all together prepare you and prepare your children for life. And they set them up to be the best person that they can be so they can achieve greatness. And, I'm so thankful for my father because I feel like that he prepared me. And it's not necessarily from always the things he said. It was the things he did. It was his presence. It was the action. It was his involvement. And even to this day, it's still that way. So I want to encourage, all the fathers out there, even those who feel like they didn't match up to any of those characteristics or hardly any of them. The beauty of it is you woke up today and you're listening to this. So there's still an opportunity to change. There's still an opportunity. If you've got a breath in your body, there's always an opportunity to change. As long as God is on the throne and he's there, he's always there. And you wake up each day, there is an opportunity to create change. And you can always learn and get 1% better each day. It may start with a letter to your child. It may start with repairing the relationship with their mother first and reaching out to them to get that part right. And then from there, building that relationship with your children so that they understand, that you went through some hard times. They understand, they hear from you. And it's not about making excuses. It's for them to at least understand where you were, but what you would like to do. And then work with them and the mother, if they're with their mother, or if they're older, just working with them to get to a place where you are better. If you're married and you haven't been doing these things, it's never too late. I always say I would rather make sure that my kids know that I love them so much, while I'm here than to wait until I'm gone. And then, it becomes a big problem. You never want to find out, or not be able to repair relationships or fix things or be the person that you can be. You don't want to wait until either that person that you're trying to fix it with is gone or you're gone and you can't do anything. And then they're left with this void of not having that relationship with you as a father. So again, we're as heirs, we are called to conquer these mountains, and family is very important. As a father, you are extremely important in the role of your children and your family overall. So understand that the fatherhood is a community. It is a role. It is a vital piece of raising children. It's a vital piece of building families and building this society and building our nation. Fatherhood is a great thing. And we've got to make sure that we are continuing to develop that and continuing to talk about that and talk about it in a positive way, because there's so many times we can focus on the negative, but we're not focused on the negative. We're heirs of the kingdom. We're focusing on those things that we can do to make it better and where we can make changes and how we can see improvements each day. That is what it's about. So, I encourage you all just to continue to strive for greatness as dads. I salute you, even those the ones that are having to deal with some stress and other things because of the relationship with with your child's mother or children's mother, whatever the case may be. This isn't about blame, and get to the place where it's not about blame. It's about doing what's right for the children. And I just pray that we all continue to grow and get stronger and know that there's support out there. And it's okay to talk about these things with other fellas. It's okay to have those conversations, because at some point or another, we all have those things. We all have things that we've got to that we are vulnerable about, and we can't talk to the women in our life about it because we need to have that with other men. Iron sharpens iron. So again, I thank you all for listening to this episode. I'm so grateful for having all of you as part of this community. Please keep checking our website. Check out our Patreon site. The information is in the description if you want to be a patron to the Airflow podcast. I would greatly appreciate that as I continue to grow and build up the community and to be able to continue to do some more cool stuff. But I look forward to talking to you all in the next episode. And as always, just remember, as an air, you are created to flow. So flow on.